The Starlight echoes Chapter 2. The sky indoors. The wooden stairs creaked rhythmically as Sonic led the way up, his footsteps light and energetic. Shadow followed several paces behind, his movements cautious, almost predatory, as he scanned the narrow hallway. He still felt the phantom weight of the family hug on his ribs, and the revelation that the humans downstairs were Sonic's parents sat heavy in his mind.
Okay, so it's not exactly a palace,
Sonic said, reaching the top landing and pushing open a small wooden door.
but it's got a lot more personality than a stasis pod, right?
The attic was bathed in the warm, golden light of the late afternoon. It was a cozy space, filled with the scent of old cedar and the faint lingering smell of Sonic's favorite sneakers. A beanbag chair sat in one corner, and a small desk held a few of Tails' discarded inventions. Shadow stepped inside, his crimson eyes darting across the room. He didn't look at the furniture. He looked at the walls, the structural supports, and the small window that offered a view of the sprawling Green Hills forest.
This was just my spot for the first 8 months after Mom and Dad took me in.
Sonic said, hopping onto his own bed and kicking his legs.
But we've got plenty of room to expand. Tails already moved some of his workshop stuff to the garage so you could have this side.
Shadow walked to the center of the room, his boots silent on the rug. He reached out, his gloved fingers tracing the edge of a shelf.
You lived here, in hiding.
Yeah, for a while.
Sonic's voice softened.
But now it's just home. And Mom and Dad said if you're staying, you shouldn't have to live in a guest room. They want you to make this yours.
Shadow turned, his expression unreadable.
Make it mine. I have no possessions. I have no history here.
That's the best part.
Sonic flipped off his bed, landing in a crouch.
Tomorrow, Dad is taking us to the local hardware store. He said we can get whatever you need to personalize this place. Paint, lights, a bed that isn't made of old blankets, the works.
Shadow looked up at the ceiling. It was slanted and bare, a blank canvas of white-painted wood. A sudden sharp memory pierced through his mind, not of a gun base or a laboratory, but of a quiet night on the moon, and an even older memory of a girl looking out a window. The light still shines, even though the star is gone.
The ceiling.
Shadow murmured, his voice almost a whisper.
The ceiling?
Sonic tilted his head.
What about it? You want to paint it black? Dark blue? I've got some leftover supersonic gold if you want some racing stripes.
Shadow didn't look at him. He kept his eyes fixed on the empty space above.
Stars. I want the stars. The ones that glow when the light is extinguished.
Sonic's grin widened, a flash of understanding crossing his face.
Glow in the dark stars? Oh man, we can definitely do that. We can do the whole galaxy up there. You'll be able to see the constellations right from your bed.
Shadow finally looked down, his gaze meeting Sonic's. For the first time, the coldness in his eyes seemed to thaw just a fraction. He thought about the man downstairs, the father he had struck, and the way he was being offered a piece of a home he hadn't earned.
I would like that.
Shadow said quietly.
To remind me that even in the dark, there is light.
Shadow walked to the window, his reflection ghostly against the glass as the sun began to dip below the horizon. The silence in the attic wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of the stasis pod. It felt lighter, filled with the distant sounds of Maddie humming downstairs and the clinking of silverware.
Sonic?
Shadow said, his back still turned.
Your father, Tom.
Sonic sat up straighter, sensing the shift in the air.
Yes.
He is a lawman.
Shadow stated, his voice tight with a struggle he couldn't quite hide.
He represents the very structures that kept me in chains for half a century. And yet, he allows me into his home. He allows me to stand near his family after London.
Sonic hopped off the bed and walked over to stand beside him.
Dad doesn't see a threat or a weapon. Shadow. He's a cop, sure, but he's a Green Hills cop. He cares about people. When he looks at you, he doesn't see guns property. He just sees another kid who's had a really, really rough start.
Shadow closed his eyes. The guilt was a physical weight now, sharper than any wound he'd sustained in the Eclipse cannon explosion.
In the city, when I struck him, I did not just hit a man. I hit your world. I saw your face when he fell. You didn't look like a hero then. You looked like you were breaking.
Sonic leaned his shoulder against the window frame, looking out at the trees.
I was. But hey, that's the thing about Dad. He's got a thick skull and a bigger heart. He's already moved past it, Shadow. You're the only one still holding onto that punch.
Shadow finally turned to look at the room again, really looking at it this time. He saw the empty corner where his bed would go. He imagined the ceiling covered in those glowing stars. Not the cold, distant stars of the vacuum of space, but the warm, flickering ones Maria had loved.
I have spent 50 years fueled by the memory of a loss.
Shadow whispered.
I do not know how to live fueled by this.
By what? Pancakes and awkward hugs?
Sonic teased gently, bumping Shadow's shoulder with his own.
It takes practice. Trust me, I spent 10 years talking to a rock. You'll get the hang of it.
Shadow didn't pull away from the shoulder bump. He just looked up at the bare white ceiling one more time.
Tomorrow then,
Shadow said, his voice regaining some of its steady resolve.
we go to this hardware store, and we find the stars.
The golden hour had faded into a deep, quiet indigo. The attic felt smaller now, wrapped in the soft glow of a bedside lamp.
All right, you two.
Tom stood in the doorway, his frame leaning comfortably against the wood.
It's been a long week for everyone, especially for a hedgehog who survived a literal space explosion. Time to shut it down.
Maddie stepped into the room behind him, carrying a stack of fresh, folded towels and an extra pillow. She set them on the small table near the empty corner where Shadow's temporary bed had been prepared.
We're just down the hall if you need anything, Shadow.
She said, her voice warm and steady.
And I mean anything. Nightmares, a glass of water, or just, if the silence gets too loud.
Sonic stretched his arms over his head, letting out a long dramatic yawn.
Finally, my quills were starting to droop.
He hopped onto his bed and pulled the covers up. As Maddie walked over, Sonic instinctively tilted his head up, his eyes fluttering shut. Shadow watched frozen, as Maddie leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to Sonic's forehead. Sonic let out a low, vibrating hum of content, the sound of a child who was completely safely loved. Shadow felt like he was witnessing a sacred ritual he wasn't meant to see. Maddie turned toward Shadow. He stiffened, his quills bristling as his back hit the wall. His defensive instincts screamed at him to move, to vanish, to protect himself from the unknown. But then he looked at Tom, who was watching with a gentle, encouraging nod. The same man Shadow had attacked, now standing guard over his sleep. Maddie didn't flinch at his sharp edges. She stepped into his personal space, her presence smelling like vanilla and home.
Good night, Shadow.
She whispered. Before he could process the movement, she leaned in. It wasn't a grab or a restraint. It was as light as a feather. Her lips touched the dark fur of his forehead, right between his crimson stripes. The wall inside Shadow, the one built of 50 years of isolation, grief, and the cold metal of a gun laboratory, didn't just crack. It shattered. His eyes went wide, his breath catching in his throat. The touch was so brief, yet it felt like a surge of chaos energy, grounding him to the earth in a way he hadn't felt since Maria's hand had slipped from his. It was a gesture of total unearned forgiveness. Maddie pulled back with a soft smile and followed Tom out, clicking the door shut with a gentle thud. The room was dark now, save for the moonlight spilling across the floor. Sonic was already drifting off, his breathing deep and rhythmic. Shadow stood by the wall for a long time, his hand slowly rising to touch the spot on his forehead where the warmth still lingered. He looked over at Sonic, then up at the bare ceiling. For the first time in half a century, the weight in his chest felt a little lighter. He wasn't a weapon tonight. He was just home. Shadow remained standing by the wall, his hand still hovering near his forehead as if trying to preserve the physical sensation of the kiss. The darkness of the attic felt different now, less like a void and more like a blanket.
You okay over there, Shadow?
Sonic's voice was quiet, stripped of its usual high-energy bounce. He was propped up on one elbow, watching the dark hedgehog through the gloom. Shadow's hand dropped slowly to his side.
She did that to me, after what I did to the lawman, after I nearly allowed the sky to fall.
I told you.
Sonic said softly, patting the edge of his mattress.
They're different. And yeah, it's a lot to take in at first. The first time Maddie hugged me, I think I actually short-circuited. I didn't know what to do with my hands.
Shadow walked over with hesitating steps, eventually sitting on the floor leaning against the foot of Sonic's bed.
I do not understand the necessity of it. The physical contact. It serves no tactical purpose. It provides no biological sustenance.
It's not for the body, Shadow. It's for the stuff inside.
Sonic sighed, staring up at the shadows on the ceiling.
When I first got to this planet, I was 3. Just a little blue blur in a big, scary world. For 10 years, I didn't touch a single living soul. Do you know what that does to you? You start to feel like you're not even real. Like you're just a ghost haunting the woods.
Shadow's gaze drifted to his own gloved hands. He thought of the stasis pod, the cold, the sensory deprivation, the decades of being treated like a specimen in a jar.
I know the feeling of being a ghost.
Shadow whispered.
That's why they do it.
Sonic continued, his voice thick with a sudden, rare vulnerability.
When Mom kisses your forehead or Dad puts a hand on your shoulder, it's like they're tethering you to the ground. They're saying, I see you. You're here. You're safe. I used to be so touch-starved I'd literally ache just watching them hug from outside their window. Now, I don't think I could live without it.
Shadow turned his head, looking at the sleeping form of the hero who had everything, yet had started with nothing. He realized that Sonic's constant energy, his chatter, and even that crushing hug on the porch weren't just personality traits. They were the actions of someone who was constantly making up for lost time.
It is overwhelming.
Shadow admitted.
The warmth. It reminds me of the sun on the moon, but it does not burn.
That's the mom effect.
Sonic chuckled, finally laying his head back down on the pillow.
You get used to it. Eventually, you stop bracing for a hit and start looking forward to the hug. Even an ultimate life form needs to be reminded he's real sometimes.
Shadow didn't respond, but he didn't move from his spot against the bed. He stayed there in the silence, listening to the house breathe around him. For the first time in 50 years, he didn't feel like a weapon of alien origin or a prisoner of war. He just felt the steady, grounding presence of a brother nearby, and the lingering warmth of a mother's grace.
Good night, Sonic.
Shadow murmured. A sleepy mumble came back from the blankets.
Night, Shadow. Don't let the bedbugs. Well, actually, Knuckles probably cleared those out with a battle cry. You're good.
Shadow leaned his head back against the wooden frame, closed his eyes, and for the first time since the meteor hit Earth, he fell into a sleep that wasn't forced upon him. The silence of the attic was shattered not by a sound from the outside, but by a low, jagged whimper from the bed next to Shadow. Shadow's eyes snapped open, his crimson irises glowing faintly in the dark. He sat up instantly, his body tense for a threat that wasn't there. He looked over to see Sonic thrashing beneath his covers, his face contorted in a mask of pure, raw agony.
No!
Sonic moaned, his voice sounding small, like the 3-year-old child who had first landed on Earth.
Longclaw, please, don't go back. Don't leave me.
Shadow watched, paralyzed, as the fastest thing alive curled into a tight, trembling ball.
Mama?
Sonic's voice broke, a high, thin sound that sliced through the room.
Mama, it's cold. Please, I'm here. I'm in the cave. I'm waiting. Please come back.
Shadow felt a cold shiver race down his spine. He had seen Sonic face down giant robots and cosmic threats without blinking, but this was different. This was the sound of a soul being hollowed out. Sonic wasn't fighting a monster. He was reliving the 10 years of isolation, the freezing winters in that dirt floor cave where the only thing he had to hug was a rock or his own knees.
Get away!
Sonic suddenly screamed, his eyes flying open, though they were vacant, trapped in the memory of the echidna owl hunt.
Longclaw!
He let out a sharp, guttural cry and collapsed into a fit of heaving sobs, burying his face in his pillow as his entire body shook with the force of his grief. The touch starvation Sonic had described earlier was no longer a theory. It was a visible, bleeding wound. Shadow didn't think. He didn't calculate the tactical disadvantage. He moved. He slid onto the edge of Sonic's bed. Remembering the way Maddie had tethered him to the world only an hour before, Shadow reached out. He didn't just pat Sonic's shoulder. He pulled the smaller hedgehog upward, wrapping his arms around him in a firm, grounding hold, much like the one Sonic had given him on the porch.
Hedgehog,
Shadow said, his voice unusually steady and deep, cutting through the panic.
listen to the rhythm of my heart. You are not in the cave. The winter is over.
Sonic's hand scrambled for purchase, his fingers locking into the white fur of Shadow's chest as he sobbed. He was shivering so hard his quills rattled, but he clung to Shadow like a lifeline in a storm.
She's gone.
Sonic choked out, his voice muffled and wrecked.
She's gone and I'm alone in the dark.
You are not alone.
Shadow interrupted, his grip tightening. He rested his chin atop Sonic's head, ignoring the sharp prickle of blue quills.
I am here. The lawman is downstairs. The mother is downstairs. You are in the light now, Sonic. Stay here. Stay with me.
Slowly, the frantic heaving of Sonic's chest began to slow. The crushing grip he had on Shadow's fur loosened just a fraction, and the terrifying tremors subsided into small, exhausted hitches. Sonic didn't pull away. He stayed tucked against the ultimate life form, soaking in the solid, unwavering warmth of someone who finally understood the weight of the dark. The door to the attic creaked open just as Sonic's sobs were tapering into exhausted hiccups. Tom and Maddie stood in the doorway, silhouettes against the dim hall light, both wearing expressions of frantic concern. Tom had his flashlight half raised, and Maddie was already halfway into the room, her heart sinking at the sight of her son's crumpled form. They stopped dead when they saw the scene. Shadow was still sitting on the edge of the bed, his dark quills contrasting sharply with the blue ones tucked against his chest. He looked up at the parents, his expression not one of his usual defiance, but of a quiet, intense guard. He looked like a sentry protecting a wounded soldier.
He is returning.
Shadow said quietly, his voice a low rumble designed not to startle the hedgehog in his arms. Maddie exhaled a breath she'd been holding since the scream reached their bedroom. She sat on the other side of Sonic, resting a gentle hand on his back. Tom moved to the foot of the bed, his presence a solid, grounding weight in the room.
The cave?
Tom asked softly, his voice thick with the shared pain he always felt when Sonic's past caught up to him. Sonic shifted, his eyes bleary and wet as he looked up at his parents.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake everyone up. It was so cold. I couldn't find her.
Don't you ever apologize for that, Sonic?
Maddie whispered, leaning over to kiss the top of his head.
We've got you. Every time you fall back into that dark, we're going to be right here to pull you out.
Shadow watched the exchange, his arms still looped around Sonic. He felt the way Sonic's body finally went limp with relief at his mother's touch.
Shadow,
Tom said, catching the dark hedgehog's eye.
thank you for being the one who got to him first.
Shadow looked down at Sonic, then back at Tom.
He told me of the 10 years, of the isolation. I did not realize that a heart could survive such a winter.
He paused, his grip on Sonic tightening for a brief second.
In the stasis pod, there was no cold. There was nothing. I do not know which is worse, to feel the freezing wind, or to feel nothing at all.
Neither of you has to feel that anymore.
Tom said firmly. He reached out, and for the first time, he placed a hand on Shadow's shoulder. Shadow didn't flinch.
That's the deal. You're both under this roof now. That means no one faces the dark alone.
The four of them sat in the quiet of the attic for a long time. The ultimate life form and the fastest thing alive were tethered between a small-town sheriff and a veterinarian. A strange family forged in the aftermath of a near apocalypse. Eventually, Sonic's eyes began to drift shut, the sheer exhaustion of the emotional purge taking over.
Thanks, Shadow.
He murmured, his voice slurring.
Best bodyguard ever.
Sleep, you foolish hedgehog.
Shadow muttered, though there was no heat in it. As Tom and Maddie slowly retreated to let them rest, Maddie lingered at the door.
You're doing a good job, Shadow.
Shadow didn't answer. He waited until the door was shut and the house was silent again. He didn't move back to his spot on the floor. He stayed on the edge of the bed, a silent crimson-striped guardian, watching over the brother who had taught him that even when the star is gone, the light and the warmth still remains.